Jon Stewart, in a recent podcast appearance, laid out a dark but probably wholly accurate prediction about what America is going to look like in the near future under Donald Trump and the way he's been contorting all of our systems and making everyone bow down to him no matter how many crimes he commits. Take a look.
But what you're seeing now is all must pay tribute to the king. And the price of that, the price of peace is different. You know, ABC had to pay 15 million. Bezos had to pay 40 million for a documentary on Melania. Zuckerberg had to pay. They just pay They just put money into the pot so that hopefully they don't get. They're paying. Like, what does that remind you of?
Michael
protection
Corleone.
money, right? It's protection money. So ultimately, at the end of this, does Trump burn our country down for insurance money? Like, where are we headed?
So as you can see, he's on the Bill Simmons podcast right there, and he's totally right. And he could have gone on and on and on about the different settlements with different networks and all the law firms that are bowing down, handing over millions of dollars in free legal services just so that the authoritarian the regime of the United States doesn't crush them. And they were doing, that's exactly what they were already doing. This is not like the mob. This is way worse than the mob. The mob wishes it could do this sort of thing. And he's already doing that. He mentioned the Melania thing. That is a $40 million bribe paid directly into the Trump bank account. It's not a donation to a PAC. It's not to his campaign. They can give $40 million. They could have given $100 million, $200 million. Again, there are so many loopholes. I don't know. I do not understand why politicians for so long couldn't figure out how to get even bigger bribes than they used to. Because you just need to do a digital trading card or have a documentary made or whatever. There's no limitations on how much money you can give. But anyway, that's where we're already at. I want Jon to talk a little bit about where we're going. Take a look.
The reason why the guy from 60 Minutes and the reason why the head of CBS News left is it's not even about the money, which I think they've said is upwards of like 50 million. Imagine paying $50 million for nothing just to get somebody to approve a merger. A, it's bribery. But B, the reason they all left is part of the deal is they have to apologize. And in that moment, these people who have built careers on their excellence and their integrity had to look and go like, all right, well, I hope I've done well enough that I can weather this, but there's no way that I'm going to apologize for doing my job the way it's supposed to be done, just because this one guy is offended by it. And ultimately, what an awful precedent that these media companies have set. But, you know, now he'll go after Harvard and Comcast or whatever the hell else he does, because a policy of appeasement always leads to more conquest.
And the list of people that Trump has already done this to is very long. NPR, who, by the way, is on this list, as we'll get to, they've compiled a list of 100 perceived enemies of Donald Trump that he has used government power to target, to silence, to take away security clearances, to strip away funding, manipulating the law. Again, weaponizing our entire government against his enemy. Exactly what they said Joe Biden was doing when Merrick Garland waited 75 years before charging Trump for any of the crimes he committed wholly in plain view, including people who've investigated Donald Trump. That's who Trump has targeted, his political opponents, former administration officials of his own administration, 8 different universities, 17 different attorneys or law firms, media groups or figures, entire shows, entire networks, constantly threatening more and more official government action against people for saying or doing things that he doesn't like, that are not illegal in any way, not unconstitutional, not doing anything like he's doing, but he wants to crush them, and he succeeded in doing that. And by the way, he sort of previewed this again with the characteristic projection that they always do. He said this to the RNC in 2020. The goal of cancel culture is to make decent Americans live in fear of being fired, expelled, shamed, humiliated, and driven from society as we know it. And of course, there was never that cancel culture from the left that they pretended. The 1,000 comedy specials called Triggered should be proof of that. Nobody was ever stopped from saying the racist and homophobic and misogynistic things that they wanted to. They made millions, made entire careers on it. But this is actually a cancel culture. This is a destruction of the free press, the destruction of our system of justice, the attacking of judges, the cowing of media organizations, the destroying of newspapers, taking down law firms. This is what a cancel culture is, if a cancel culture is to mean anything at all, Yaz. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these are the people who are actually losing their jobs and losing their lifestyles and losing their livelihoods because of something that this administration finds offensive, because they did or said something that the administration doesn't like, which is the definition of cancel culture. Except all of this is happening in a very real way. And a lot of it's happening to everyday Americans who don't have giant platforms. These are just people who are going to work every day. And then they get there and find out that not because they did anything wrong, but they now have no job and they're being demonized by a lot of these MAGA people. They're saying, look, you're the one who's doing all the waste, fraud, and abuse. And it's like either you said or somebody in the comments said, average everyday Americans are not the enemies. They are not the people who are committing waste, fraud, and abuse. Yes, of course, some people are crooks, right? But a lot of those crooks live and work in our government, right? Most of it is coming from the government. All of this is happening because we know that they want their tax cuts, right? It's not a secret as to why they're doing the things that they're doing, but they have to demonize it because everything the American government does, they have to have the policy aspect of it, but they also have to sell it to the people. They have to have their own reasons, but they also have to have the reason that the people are going to get behind it and the reason that the people are going to support and, really not get in the way whenever the government tries to do whatever it is that the government actually wants to do. And, as far as Jon Stewart's interview and the things that he was saying, MAGA will say that this is hyperbolic and overstated. They're already saying that. But they've been saying that for the last 10 years. They've been defending things that Trump has been saying, oh, he didn't really mean that, which means that they acknowledge that the things that he said sound terrible and are terrible. But they say, I know how it sounds, but that's not really what he meant. If that's not what he meant, then he should have just said what he meant. This is the president of the United States. The things that come out of his mouth have repercussions and ramifications, not just in this country to very real Americans, but around the world. So maybe he could be a little bit more careful and actually say the things that he means to say. But the reality is that Trump means the things that he says. He is saying what he means to say. They've been saying this about Trump since the very beginning, with he came out with very incredibly divisive rhetoric from before he even announced that he was running for president in 2015. And I'm going to remind people that Trump has always been this, right? He's never been a better person than what we're seeing now. He's just more unhinged because he's allowed to be, because he is one of the most powerful people in the entire world right now. And our government that would have performed some checks and balances on not just, his policies, but also on his rhetoric, have not done so, refused to do so. And, I can forgive people for voting for him once because back then, and I know it's hard to remember what it was like 10 years ago, but even though Trump was already so divisive and racist and misogynistic, et cetera, in his stances and beliefs and the things that he was saying out loud, I don't think that the American people really were able to understand that our government could devolve as much as it has. I don't think that the people who voted for him the first time really believe that our institutions could buckle so desperately under pressure from this man and his lackeys who are now all in our government. I really think that Americans thought of this country as if, we're the Titanic. We are unsinkable. Nothing is going to destroy our institutions. But the people who voted for him a second and a third time, I know the reasons that they give as to why they did. I can do my best to empathize with their situations and their mindsets and, how they view reality. But there's just no excuse for being surprised by any of this. And I think the people who are still defending Trump and this administration are either uneducated or they're in denial or they really do support everything that he's doing.
Yeah, I think you make a good point. As you started to explain that, I had some trouble with it because he was so terrible in the lead up to that first election. But you're right, people had different ideas about the durability of the American government, and you should not have those now. But I don't know, maybe people care more about sticking it to, like as we'll get to in the aftermath, an athlete who says a thing that makes them uncomfortable, they'd be willing to see our economy, our government go down in flames just to stick it to that athlete or whatever. Maybe we'll debate that in the aftermath.